Heyo fellow pretzels, it's me, Earphone Pretzel. In this video, I try to beat Pokémon Sword version, but the only attack I can use in every battle is Metronome, an attack which pretty much just picks from any move in the game at random to use. So it could be something useful to me at that moment in time, or it could just ultimately cost me the entire battle, or maybe, just maybe, even wipe out my own Pokémon. Can I conquer the Galar region while pretty much relying on pure luck for every battle I find myself in? Without any more delays, here we go. So to begin with, my starter Pokemon is none of the Galar starters actually, because initially, when I looked at what Pokemon in Generation 8 could learn the move Metronome, I could not find a single one of these guys on the list at first. So after I picked Sobble, I did away with it, and later on during the run, I ended up checking the list again, and whoops. And since nothing at the start of the game could learn the move Metronome, I decided for the sake of the challenge to hatch my starting Pokemon on a completed save file and then bring it over to this one. And what starter Pokemon did I pick for myself? Well, ladies and gentlemen, say hello to our main character of this adventure, Goku, who I immediately put to work against this wild Rookidee, and yeah, I can't understand why the starter Pokemon you were given initially is level 5 now, because that happened. I then tried battling against a level 3 Scorvet, which was looking pretty bleak right from the get-go. Fortunately though, Goku's ability is Q-Charm, which took effect, which will prevent Scorvet from attacking 50% of the time. But I think the luck was a bit too heavy on my part for the rest of this battle, because not only did Scorvet not score a single hit on Goku after Q-Charm activated, but midway into the battle, Goku got the move Outrage, and made quick and easy work out of the Scorvet during the following 3 turns, which brought Goku up to level 4, and after getting my revenge on the evil Rookidee from before, and also bringing Goku up to level 6, I then proceeded to also make quick work out of the trainers on Route 2, using probably the most unique strategies ever employed by a Cleffa, wiping out another Scorvet with a Volt Tackle, Giga Drain and Payday on a Choodle, and last but not least, performing a submission on a Nickit in the Hail. Also, I did not know how much friendship is required for Cleffa to evolve into Clefairy, and what Cleffa's base friendship is from hatching, because to my surprise, Goku is already evolving into Clefairy right before the first Hop battle. Speaking of which, time for my first battle with Hop, which I was immediately concerned about, because this was the first trainer in the game that had 3 Pokemon at the ready, and as for the move Metronome itself, that can only be used up to 10 times before Goku begins to struggle herself to death. Wooloo took me 4 Metronomes to take out. The first gave me some guaranteed chip damage every turn through Fire Spin. Then came Worry Seed, and what the heck does Magnetic Flux even do again? But after that, the next move I was given was Tri Attack, finishing off the Wooloo. But then, everything fell apart when Hop sent out his Scorbunny. To begin with, since Scorbunny was faster than my Clefairy, Fake Out was pretty much the same as getting a move like Splash. And while Night Daze did some decent damage, other moves that were picked, like Fell Stinger and even Sacred Fire, did barely anything. At one point, I did get the move Disable, but all that did was stop Scorbunny from using Growl, so that pretty much meant Scorbunny was guaranteed to hit Goku every turn from this point forward. And not long after, I ended up using my last Metronome, which for the record, if this did manage to knock out Scorbunny, it would not have mattered anyway, since I still would have had to battle Hop's Rookidee. But on the upside, this was one of the few battles in the game that continues the story regardless if you win or lose. So, onto the wild area, which will serve as an introduction to this game's main battle gimmick that will make this challenge a bit more difficult than it already is. Dynamax. Outside of Dynamax battles, if a trainer Dynamaxes their Pokemon, they will gain more HP, making them harder to take out, alongside all their attacks becoming max moves, which for this challenge, since all I can use is Metronome, that pretty much means that I am not allowed to Dynamax my Pokemon a single time. The only upside to this is that Dynamax only lasts for 3 turns, so while I am here, I think I should get some more party members before my first gym battle, so I went ahead and caught a Tyrogue. I caught a Tyrogue. God damn it. Alright, I caught this one at least, adding Vegeta, the either Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan, onto the team. Yeah, those 2 can learn Metronome, but for some reason, Tyrogue and Hitmontop cannot. But regardless, this means we cannot use Vegeta until he hits level 20, where fate will decide what he will become. Then after signing up for the gym challenge, I headed off to the inn to rest up for the night, where I proceeded to give Team Yell their first look of what to expect from Galar's soon-to-be champion. Also, Hop You're supposed to make double battles easier for me. Why would you use Growl on a Nickit when this is an easy kill at this range? Speaking of Hup, once again, it was time for another battle with him, and spoiler alert, I ended up losing again. Not because I ran out of metronomes, but because it actually happened for the first time in this run. Since Clefairy was the only Pokemon with Metronome on my team at this point in the challenge, I decided to go back to the train station and make my way to the Isle of Armor to potentially encounter some additional party members for the team. But before I could begin exploring the area, unfortunately for me, Clara wanted to give me an introductory battle, which, unlike the first battle with Hop, I had to win in order to continue. And while I did manage to take out the Venipede, my Clefairy unfortunately also got poisoned in the process, and because I was unable to score a super effective move for the Slowpoke, it was only a matter of time until Goku once again fell. So I cannot get past Hop, and I cannot get past Clara. So what am I gonna do? Well, the whole reason I went on this side quest, you could say, was to gather additional party members in order to beat Hop and progress through the story. Clara has 2 Pokemon, and Goku, unfortunately, is weak to poison, which is the type Clara specializes in. So, in order to even the playing field, I grinded out max raid battles in order to collect XP candy, which I used to get Vegeta the Tyrogue up to level 20. And fate has decided that Vegeta would become a Hitmonchan. Now with a second usable Pokemon finally on my side, I returned to the Isle of Armor to get my revenge on Clara. And to say that Vegeta carried this battle would be probably one of the biggest understatements I've ever made online. It's set up against the Venipede with Shell Smash, then took it out 2 Metronomes later with a Water Pledge. Then came a Tri-Attack and a Parabolic Charge for the Slowpoke. Plus, the added bonus of Vegeta just straight up mocking Slowpoke midway into the battle, because why not? I ended up catching 2 new party members on the Isle of Armor, both of which had their own unique reasons for being annoying to catch. Abra's whole shtick of teleporting away after the first turn may be annoying, but thankfully, Abra is not that hard to catch, so I was able to add it to the team on the second try. Miltank, however, was a whole different story. This Pokemon was also caught on the second try, but not after it completely decimated my team the first time with Rollout. Where have I heard that before? But despite that annoyance, Miltank actually carried me throughout the entire second Hot battle. It beat the Wooloo using a Blizzard and a Grassy Glide, and while Scorbunny lowered Miltank to almost half HP, I did manage to finish it off and get a defense boost thanks to Skull Bash. And as for the final Pokemon, Rookidee, Thrash completely annihilated it. Route 3 and the Galamine were both pretty straightforward, despite how often I had to keep healing my party or running back to the Pokemon Center to recover Metronomes, which doesn't really sound pretty straightforward as I just put it, but it was essentially what I expected going into this challenge. My luck with attacks overall was pretty good throughout, and during this, Roshi the Abra evolved into Kadabra. Then came Bede, whose Solosis went down with ease, despite this annoyance. Hatenna then got frozen to death by Roshi's Glaciate, followed by Goku's Ice Beam, and lastly, Gothita fell in awe to Goku's Pedal Dance. You know, Bede, there really isn't much for you to remember here. This is essentially what my whole journey is going to revolve around. Now it was time for the first gym challenge, which, aside from the one unavoidable trainer at the start, I was able to dodge everybody else, conserving my team's metronomes for my battle against the gym leader, Milo. Gossifleur was taken down by Fire Fang and Flare Blitz from Roshi, which, physical fire moves from a Kadabra, not something you see every day, but I guess it checks out. And next up was the Dynamax Eldegoss, which, after it took out my Kadabra with its first max attack, Vegeta managed to score a Sweet Kiss attack, confusing it, but it unfortunately broke through the confusion during the following 2 turns. But at least Eldegoss has now reverted back to its original size, making the battle a bit more manageable now. But then, Vegeta decided to use the move Soak, turning Eldegoss into a water type. Vegeta was still able to get in some decent damage with moves like Stomp and Psycho Cut, until eventually getting taken down. So I finished off the battle using King Cold the Miltank. Ice Punch, while not being affected now, froze the Eldegoss. Smackdown then brought it down to red HP, and finally, just like Gossifleur, Eldegoss went down to a Flare Blitz, earning me my first gym badge after 6 hours of playtime. Prior to me taking on the first gym challenge, I decided to catch a Milcery since Alcremie is another Pokemon capable of learning Metronome, and all that takes to evolve is any kind of sweet which can be obtained from the Cafe Master, whom you could battle once per day. So I went back to Motorstoke to challenge him, incinerated his Combi with a Scald attack, obtained a Strawberry Sweet for my victory, and one quick spin later,
What the f*** are you doing?
Alchemy has joined the team. Including a double battle against this news crew right here, Route 5 flew by pretty quickly, and aside from this one Sableye that I mainly chipped away at slowly with Leech Seed, the Team Yell Grunts were not much to write home about either. And waiting for me on the bridge was another challenge from Hop, which went almost the same as the last time I fought him. Only real differences this time are both his Rookity and Scorbunny have evolved, and this battle only took me one try to beat instead of two. There is one unfortunate thing I did not point out just then. Remember around 5 minutes ago in this video when Goku took himself out with the move Memento? Well, after Roshi defeated the Wooloo with a Storm Throw, next up was Corvisquire, which Chi-Chi the Alcremie decided to take down using Final Gambit. This was Chi-Chi's first true battle in this challenge. Oh yeah, then Reboot fell to a snipe shot from Vegeta. On a lighter note though, I now made it to Holbury City, which means time for the second gym battle against the Water-type gym leader, Nessa. Goldeen was not surprisingly very easy to deal with, then Arrokuda was next, and even though I expected it to finish off Goku, which it of course did, Chi-Chi, who I sent out next, while she did manage to bring Arrokuda down to half HP, she also ended up using attacks like Mean Look and Harden, which at that point in time was pretty much pointless, considering Arrokuda knew the move Aqua Jet, and Chi-Chi only had 2 HP left, so Chi-Chi is out. Vegeta was up next, whom, after doing this, of all things, began setting up stat boosts with moves like Coil and Work Up. Then after finishing off the Arrokuda with a Vine Whip, all that was left was Dynamax Dreadnought, which pretty much sealed my fate on the third max move, because it used Max Geyser, setting up the rain and boosting the power of its water type attacks. So undoubtedly, there's no possible way that Roshi could have survived this either. So this first attempt was a complete failure, so you know what I decided to do? Go back to the wild area and grind more Dynamax battles. Yeah, this is going to be a recurring theme by the way. And while I was here, one of the power spots I came across actually contained a Pokemon that would be possible to add as my 6th party member, which I defeated and successfully caught, adding Beerus the Impidimp onto the team. And I was still in the wild area for quite a while after that, because I chose to grind my team up to level 30 before I went back to challenge Nessa to a rematch. Beerus started off the battle by going for U-turn, meaning I immediately had to switch out to another Pokemon. I went with Goku, and this is literally the second time that has happened! I then brought Beerus back in for the Arrokuda, and he pretty much locked the Arrokuda into using Aqua Jet, which was then followed up by a Water Pulse, and then Bug Buzz finished off the Arrokuda. Beerus then unsurprisingly fell to Dreadnought's first Dynamax attack. But the good news though, is Chi-Chi the Alcremie then scored some decent starting damage with the move Bone Rush, and also then scored a paralysis with the move Stun Spore. Dreadnought unfortunately was still able to set up the rain with Max Geyser, but after Chi-Chi got taken down by a Razor Shell, the rain finally stopped, so all I need now is for Roshi to finish it off with a super... Okay, that's a super offensive move, but that did not do enough. So Vegeta finished the job. Two badges down, 6 to go. And hello again, Bede. Last time we fought, you said you'd take note of my battling style, but if there's one thing you should expect from the move Metronome, it's expect the unexpected. Like this. Your Solosis, Fusion Flare. Your Ponyta, Roshi will just use Energy Ball on that one, which you could still argue that Kadabra could still learn that via TR, and you'd be right on that one. But can any Miltank just naturally take out your Gothita or Hatena with moves like Octazooka or Bind? I did not think so. I guess I can also show this style of battling to Marnie as well while I'm back here at Motorstoke. I did also battle some more grunts back in the mine. Hop joined me for that one, and he actually did what he was meant to do this time. My battle with Marnie also taught me something new about Metronome. That being, the move Last Resort does not work if it's picked, even if Metronome is the only move your Pokemon currently knows. Marnie for some reason decided to use her Super Potion on her first Pokemon, and that ended up being a waste on her end, because Roshi then followed up with Bulldoze, and while Triple Kick and Sludge Wave were both not that effective, it was still enough to finish off the Croagunk. Chi-Chi was up next for Scraggy, and with a combination of Sand Tomb chip damage and Ice Punch, Scraggy was out of the battle too, which just leaves more Pico, and Vegeta did not waste any time defeating this Pokemon, that's for sure. So up next is gym number 3, and the Fire-type gym leader, Kabu. To begin with, Ninetales immediately went for Will-O-Wisp, not only chipping away Beerus's HP every turn, but also weakening his physical attacks, which, despite that predicament, Beerus still decided to use physical attacks anyway, which as you can see, they didn't really do much. Beerus at least managed to get off a tri-attack before going down to another fire spin, but it still wasn't enough to bring Ninetales down to half HP. So up next was Chi-Chi, and all she did here was pretty much just make things worse. Fairy Wind did close to no damage. Trick or Treat changed Ninetales' type to Ghost, effectively making it immune to normal type attacks. And guess what kind of move Chi-Chi decided to use next? A normal type attack! Hip hip f***ing hooray. And believe it or not, Chi-Chi somehow still found another way to worsen my current situation here. Her next attack was Sacred Fire, which pretty much granted a free buff to Ninetales. After that though, Chi-Chi fell to chip damage from Fire Spin. Roshi then brought Ninetales down to red HP, and guess what happened next? Charm and Fairy Lock. So my next resort was Vegeta, and surprise, he did not make things better either. Razor Leaf, which still wasn't enough to take out the Ninetales. Present, which I guess could have healed Ninetales, given my current streak of luck in this gym. And then we got Leer and Thunder Wave, which probably would have been useful earlier. At this point, I only have Goku and King Cold left on standby, and there are still 2 Pokemon that Kabu is yet to throw out. But at least I can finally say that Ninetales is out, meaning up next is Arcanine, who pretty much starts off the battle the same way Ninetales does. Great. Goku managed to set up a light screen for when King Cold enters the battle, which, given how this gym has been going for me so far, this might be a shock for me to say, but King Cold didn't really need it, because, well, I guess you could say this was like an echo to the past of some sort, because after casting an eerie spell on the Arcanine, King Cold used her final move. I do not think that words alone can describe how speechless I was after King Cold took down the G-Max Cinder Scorch in just one hit. That now earns me my 3rd gym badge, and my next destination takes me back to the wild area, meaning more places to explore, more encounters granting us additional party members, starting off with this Togepi in the grass, and from a brand new power spot just across the bridge, Indeedee, which also spares me the trouble of having to wait until I beat the next gym in order to catch one. I also managed to acquire a Moonstone from the Digging Duo, meaning I could finally bring Goku up to her final form, and while everything back here in the wild area sounds like it's going well, all sunshine and rainbows, don't worry, we still had an accident along the way before Beerus evolved into Morgrim. I was given a brief explanation on how the houses and buildings of the whole Galar region are powered, followed by a quick trip to the vault, where I also got some more insight on what was known as the Darkest Day. Yeah, I didn't quite touch on that earlier, did I? One thing's for sure though, we'll see more of it again later. Route 6 had quite a fun battle at the beginning, my Clefable versus her Clefable, and all that happened was we just both kept using Metronome. And funnily enough, once I was done with this play session, I decided to head to Cerebi.net just to check the trainers here and verify whether or not she could have used anything else. And that was actually not the case. Just like my Pokemon, all they know is Metronome. Waiting for me outside the Storm City side gym was Hop once again, this time with a much fresher team. First up to bat was Cramorant, and the battle between it and King Cold went as followed. King Cold viciously swooped in on Cramorant, then Cramorant took a dive, gorging over Pikachu in the process, which he then used as a last resort after going down to extreme speed the following turn. Next up was Silicobra, which King Cold immediately horn drilled into oblivion. Toxel brought King Cold down to red HP before falling to a Volt Tackle, and as for the final Pokemon, Raboot, I left that one up to Beerus. Now it was time for the next gym battle, and since I'm playing Pokémon Sword version, our 4th gym leader in this adventure will be the fighting type user, B. And my first battle against her went pretty bad to put it lightly. Sticky Web, Double Team, which still amounted to nothing, Struggle Bug, which, yeah, Splash! I was somehow not lucky enough to get past B's first Pokemon, so it was back to the grindstone, and also I decided to overhaul my team a little bit before going back for a rematch, adding both Indeedee and Togepi onto the team, which I ended up evolving during the grind, and after acquiring a shiny stone from the Digging Duo, I officially had a level 40 Togekiss ready for battle. I decided to get everyone in my current team up to level 40 before going back for a rematch, and one thing's probably for sure, I will more than likely need to overlevel to an even bigger degree for when I reach the late game. I'll worry about that later, but for now, I flip turn against the Hitmontop before Chi-Chi proceeded to finish it off with a single quick attack. Kame got locked into Uproar against the Pangoro, which also led to some decent damage against the following Pokemon, Surfetch'd. One power gem later though, Surfetch'd was down and out, leaving only Gigantamax Machamp. And with all 6 of my Pokemon still standing, I think it's safe to say I've got this one in the bag, but just in case if I didn't... 4 badges down, 4 to go. And Beat is now planning to destroy a historical artwork, which, the good news is, silencing him was extremely easy, and I also got to witness his position as a Gala Gym Challenger vanish right before his eyes, which was a satisfying bonus. But the bad news though, was the artwork ended up collapsing anyway. Nothing for it but to carry out the Glimwood Tangle, which once again introduced me to another brand new Pokemon to add to the team, Sinistea. Prior to me taking on the 4th gym battle, I went to the market area in Stowonside, and the day that I was playing on, the guy was selling a cracked pot, which is required to evolve the phony form of Sinistea into Poltergeist. And that wasn't the only evolution we got here, because after defeating this couple right outside of town, Beerus the Morgrim evolved into Grimmsnarl. Another town, another gym battle, and while there's no puzzle prior to the battle against the gym leader herself, stat boost from answering questions correctly here is pretty interesting, and even though they can potentially turn the tide of a battle, it probably will not in the case of this challenge, assuming my luck continues being bad. Kami gets poisoned by Galarian Weezing almost immediately, but after that, the following 2 turns granted Kami to use Freeze Dry and Hurricane, which scored me the first KO of the battle. Mawile was next, and it was also time for another question, which this one granted me a stat buff to both of Beerus' attack stats. And even though Mawile got off an Iron Defense and has the type advantage against Beerus, a Brave Bird and a Stone Edge were both enough to take it down. Togekiss was next, and a single Sludge Bomb was all it took to beat this one. And after G-Max Alchemy reverted back to its normal form, the rest of the battle was smooth sailing. After earning my 5th gym badge, Opal joins me on my way back to Hammerlock, and decides to take him Bede primarily because of his fashion sense. I mean, sure, but is no one seriously going to tell Opal that this is the guy that basically destroyed the art mural right outside of her hometown? No? Okay then. The next up was another battle with Hup on the Route 7 bridge, and things at the beginning were going surprisingly well on my end. Kame took down the Trevenant with a super effective Searing Shot, Freeze Dry and Scorching Sands for the Boltund, and then Cinderace came out, and it managed to take out both Beerus the Grimmsnarl and Bulma the Poltergeist by only using Pyro Ball. Bulma though was taken down in one hit, because of course it had to be a crit. In response to the damage done to my team, Kyuga the Togekiss attacked, using the signature move of what could have been on my team at this very moment. Snorlax was next, and I think the best way to sum up how long this battle took is to say every attack that Goku used against this Pokemon in rapid succession. Tickle, Q-Charm ability activated, Supersonic, Hail, String Shot, Geomancy, Gust, Eruption, which you'd think would do a big chunk of damage thanks to the boost from Geomancy, but not in this case, because Snorlax's ability is Thick Fat, cutting the damage from fire and ice attacks significantly. Then came Electro Web, and finally, Psybeam finishes off the Snorlax, leaving only Heatmore, which Chi-Chi proceeded to fake out, then finish off the following turn with a Night Slash. And it looks like we'll be seeing him again after we acquire our 6th gym badge, so on to Search Esther. And honestly, in my opinion, probably one of the worst gym puzzles in the entire Pokemon franchise. The gym leader here is the Rock-type specialist Gordy, and he starts off the battle with Barbaracle. This Pokemon knows the move Shell Smash, which could potentially sweep my team if my luck ends up going down the drain. Okay, that was easy. Then up next was Shuckle, and this one took a while to beat, not only because of its absurd defense stat, but also because of the fact that Beerus decided midway into the battle to just take a rest. One Water Pulse after waking up later, Shuckle was down and out, and after running out of Metronomes against Stonejourner, I proceeded to then throw out Bulma, who somehow managed to take out Stonejourner at almost full health with a single Icy Wind attack. Last but not least was Colossal. Before Goku fell to a G-Max Focalith, she managed to set up the Rain, and then one dive attack later from Chi-Chi. The 6th gym badge was mine. Up next was another battle with Hup, and for the first time in quite a while, Hup brought his beloved sheep back onto the team, and oh my god, I wish he did not do that. Because not only did this battle between Double and Alcremie last 9 turns, but because of moves like Defense Curl and Growl, Chi-Chi couldn't even bring Double down half HP. Well, at least Bulma had the answer for this. I unfortunately could not roll a second Aura Sphere for the Snorlax, so 2 crunches later, Bomber was out. I then sent in Beerus the Grimmsnarl, who for some reason tried firing off a Solar Beam, which was definitely not the brightest of ideas, but thankfully Beerus got his act together and proceeded to take out the Snorlax using Knockoff. Kyuuka then began to set up thanks to Calm Mind, and after one Boom Burst attack, Cinderace was out of the battle. She then tried toughing it out against the Pink Urchin, but unfortunately, because we are battling in the hail, Kyuuka fell at the end of the turn. Goku was next, and after a takedown, Ancient Power, and additional chip damage from the hail, all that was left was Corviknight. And just like Kyuuka, Goku tried toughing it out in the hail, and to my surprise, it actually ended up working out in the end, because Goku's next attack was Parabolic Charge, not only restoring her own HP, but also bringing Corviknight down to the point where hail would be enough to finish off the battle. Hop definitely stepped his game up this time, so you know what? Good on him. Before making my way to the 7th gym, I decided to head back to the wild area to check the current raid battles, and the first den that I encountered contained a Galarian Mr. Mime, which I proceeded to battle, capture, and evolve almost immediately. And with 6 gym badges under my belt, I was finally able to capture the Snorlax waiting for me on the other side of the bridge. There are other Pokemon in the wild area that I do wish to eventually add to the team, but because of the level that they are encountered at, these guys require me to obtain all 8 gym badges first. So, we'll have to come back from a champ later. But with 2 new party members added to the team, I continued down the path of Route 9, sent Team Yell packing once again, and finally got the ability to ride my bike over the water. And why is everyone here dressed like this? They do know that ice coats a decent chunk of the water here on this route, right? After arriving outside of Spikemuth, we see that the door into the city is completely closed off, so Marnie shows us a secret way in, but in order for us to get inside, we must once again defeat her in a battle. She leads off with Liepard, and I lead off with Kyuuka the Togekiss. And turn 1 of the battle ended up being the most unlucky and most pointless turn I think of this entire run, because not only is Ludidance a self-KOing move, but literally nothing on my team currently needs healing, so Liepard essentially just got a free win by doing absolutely nothing. Vegeta came out next, and proceeded to OHKO the Liepard with a critical hit Meteor Beam. As for Toxicroak, Vegeta started off this one with a Core Enforcer, before essentially getting an attack boost from Swagger, because luckily for me, Vegeta did not hit himself a single time while he was confused. Marnie then decided to use a Hyper Potion, so Accelerock could not finish off the Toxicroak that turn, but then after charging up on the following turn, my next attack was Flare Blitz, finishing off the Toxicroak, but unfortunately, Vegeta also went down due to recoil damage. Up next on her end was Scrafty, and I sent out Goku, whose first attack of this battle was Vicious Rend, which due to my Pokemon being faster than Marnie's, Vicious Rend's power was doubled. At least Marnie did not use any more Hyper Potions, because all I got in the following 3 turns were Focus Energy, Night Slash, which despite being a crit, did barely anything due to Scrafty's typing, and lastly, Ember. I finished it off the following turn with a Razor Shell, which only left more Pico, which Goku proceeded to one-shot with a critical hit Fusion Flare. Where was this when Scrafty was still out on the field? Well, I guess it doesn't really matter now. So, onto the Spikemuth gym, and time to battle, the Dark-type user Piers. In this one, I felt more confident about, given that this is the only gym in the game where the gym leader does not Dynamax their Pokemon at all. I once again led off with Kyuuka, and Piers leads off with Scrafty, whose Intimidate ability lowered Kyuuka's attack stat right from the get-go, making the following Horn attack deal less damage than it otherwise would. A couple turns later, I ended up rolling the move Octolock, which over the following 2 turns lowered both the Scrafty's defense stats, and after getting the move Melosound, lowering Scrafty's special defense even further, Kyuuka then decided to use the move Earth Power, taking out the Scrafty at almost full health. I then unfortunately ran out of Metronomes in the following turn, so I decided to bring in Beerus the Grimmsnarl to take care of the Malamar. This round started off pretty nicely with a critical hit Flame Wheel, bringing Malamar down to half HP, but then I got Zen Headbutt in the following turn, which does literally nothing to Malamar. And unfortunately, the next move Air Slash did not quite make the mark to finish it off. Even though I didn't really need healing at this point, I ended up getting the move Milk Drink anyway, and then finally 2 more turns later, I finished off the Malamar using Discharge. Obstagoon was next, and this one managed to stall me out for a while thanks to its signature move Obstruct. After once again running out of Metronomes on Beerus the Grimmsnarl, my next choice was Kinkai the Snorlax, and he managed to disable the Obstagoon's Throat Chop attack, and also managed to score himself some additional self-healing thanks to getting the move Aqua Ring. The next move I got was a super effective Pin Missile that unfortunately did not score enough hits to finish off the Obstagoon, allowing it to stall me out for another turn, but thankfully after that though, Aeroblast finished it off, meaning all that was left now was Skuntank, and all this one took was a Core Enforcer from King Kai, followed by an Iron Tail and a Razor Shell from Goku. And with that, only one more badge to go. And all I gotta say about this final gym battle is, it was the worst battle of this entire challenge to beat, by far. So I've played quite a few double battles in this adventure so far, but in the case of the Badoo drop in and Galamine number 2, I could at least count on Hop to carry me if things went south. Also, my luck with Metronome was very bad. Raihan's team was also obnoxious, Gigalith being the tank of the team, Flygon's Breaking Swipe lowering my Pokemon's attack stats, Sandaconda's Sandspit ability setting up the Sandstorm, which none of my team is safe from, mind you, and I also remembered something else regarding my team when it came time to battle G-Max Duraludon. More than half of my team is weak to Steel, and plus the fact that Duraludon's max moves can essentially buff both its attack and defense stats, I guess it's no surprise that I ended up stuck here for quite a while. But as for the attempt where I did finally succeed after, Editor Me just put up a sentence on a black screen telling the audience how many attempts this gym bout actually took to win. Kyuka started off using Happy Hour for some reason, while Beerus managed to score a Blizzard attack. One of the few attacks that I was constantly begging for during this battle, and the luck from this successful attempt did not stop there, because Kyuka's next attack was Sparkling Aria, one-shotting the Sandaconda, meaning we're already up to G-Max Duraludon, and this was the only attempt where I actually managed to get this far into the battle, with all 6 of my Pokemon still standing. Beerus proceeded to finish off the Gigalith using a Draining Kiss, and after Duraludon reverted back to its normal size, Vegeta and King Kai began whittling it down little by little, until finally, at long last, the 8th and final gym badge was obtained, meaning I could finally catch that Machamp that I encountered back in the wild area and add him to the team. And also right by the Stony Wilderness, I also decided to add this Dusknoir onto the team too. And now with nothing left standing in my way, I finally arrived in the town of Winden, home of the Gala Pokemon League. My first opponent was Marnie, and she leads off with Liepard, whom after getting hit by a surf attack from Dr. Brief, it decided to use Torment, which pretty much means I cannot use the same move twice in a row. And considering this also takes Metronome into consideration, Torment is essentially a guaranteed switch. I decided to switch into Beerus, and he proceeded to one-shot the Liepard with a single Woodhammer attack, essentially wasting the full restore that Marnie used 5 seconds prior. Toxicroak was next, and Horndrill surprisingly landed once again. Kyuka then lashed out at the Scrafty after it took down Beerus the Grimmsnarl, and after a Stone Edge and Grassy Glide from Goku, Morpeko was down. And I think you pretty much get at this point how all these final Dynamax, Gigantamax faces go in this challenge. Grow, 3 turns, or use Steel Roller at the most fitting and convenient time. I wonder if we'll get that same kind of luck in the next battle, because up next was our final battle with Hop, who once again leads up with Double. And just like last time, I was stuck on this Pokemon for quite a while, thanks to the move Cotton Guard, which boosted Double's defense stat by 3 stages. So after only using Cotton Guard twice, Double's defense stat was already maxed out. The good news though, is that critical hits ignore defense boosts, so after a critical hit Stone Edge from Goku, I was finally done with Double. Pincurchin was then defeated after a Night Slash, followed up by a Play Rough, and despite the unfavourable matchup against Corviknight, Luck manages to strike again with a super effective Fusion Flare. Goku managed to survive a heavy slam from Snorlax on 11 HP, which meant I could still fire off one last Metronome before going down the following turn. And somehow by pure coincidence, my Clefable somehow managed to get the move Moonblast, but despite the move being Stab, it was still not enough to take out the Snorlax. So up next was Kyuka, and after a Twister attack followed by Absorb, all that was left now was Dynamax Cinderace. So 3 turns, Shrink, Boom Burst, done. After the Gala League semifinals, me and Hop spend the next several hours waiting for Leon in the hotel lobby, and we learn from Piers that he is attending to something at Rose Tower. Oleana tells us that one of the staff members is holding the key to get inside, which, why would you tell me that if what's going on here is none of my business? So I ended up chasing the league staff member all around the town, beating every Pokemon that he threw out one by one, and once I managed to collect the key card, I then had to battle even more staff members during the climb, but at least this time, I could count on Hop to carry me throughout these double battles. Waiting for us at the top was Oleana, who immediately loses it after seeing us get this far, even though us getting up here was her own fault to begin with. My first attack of the battle was Encore, which meant Frostlass was locked into using the move Will-O-Wisp for the following 3 turns, and during those 3 turns, Beerus managed to score the moves Zingzap, Spatial Rend, and then finish off the Frostlass with a Clear Smog. My first attack against the Salazzle was Rollout, and while that does sound amazing, because Frostlass inflicted a burn on my Grimmsnarl, Rollout's damage was unfortunately cut pretty significantly. Beerus was also at a point where the next Venoshock would be enough to finish it off, So up next was Boo the Dusknoir, who started off with a not very effective Aurora Beam attack, but then came additional chip damage thanks to Magma Storm. Boo managed to bring the Salazzle down to red HP before falling to poison damage, and after one flying press from King Kai, only 3 Pokemon left. And it seemed like I was going to make a clean sweep out of the rest of Oleana's team, because the next move that King Kai managed to roll was Thrash. And that actually managed to one-hit KO the Milotic, although we could not keep it going for much longer, because Zarina then used Attract on King Kai, which immobilized him that turn, and due to fatigue from Thrash also inflicting confusion, I switched into Goku, and a few turns later, I got the move Gunk Shot, finishing off the Zarina. Garbodor go big, turn, 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 shrink, boom. After that battle, we finally find Leon, grab some long-awaited dinner, and then up next was the Gala League Finals. But before the final bracket could begin, Bede makes his way onto the pitch and demands to take us on, this time as the brand new Fairy-type gym leader. Goku was able to confuse the Mawile using Supersonic, and while it did work initially, it was still not enough to finish it off, and it eventually knocked out Goku using a few Iron Heads. I then sent out Gohan, and on his first turn on the field, he finished off the Mawile using Superpower. Gardevoir was next, and for a second, I thought I was going to be in really big trouble, because Gardevoir used the move Calm Mind 3 times in a row. But before it could put its boosted special attack to use, Dr. Brief got to use the move Brave Bird, taking out Gardevoir at almost full health. But as for Galarian Rapidash though, Last Resort, Sticky Web, Safeguard, Fake Tears, Dr. Brief goes down, Magicoat, Close Combat, finally inflicting some damage on my own. Every other bit of damage that Rapidash had taken up to this point, that was all recoil damage from Takedown. And finally, some luck resurfaces, and Poison Fang takes it out. And before G-Max Hatterene could shrink back down to normal size, King Kai scores the move Iron Tail, once again taking it down at almost full health, which was surprising to see again. 1 gym leader down, 3 to go. First up in the finals bracket was Nessa, and after bringing her Gliscopod down to yellow HP, she proceeded to switch into Seeking, and I do not think I've ever had this much trouble going up against a Seeking in my life. To begin with, it started off by using Aqua Ring, meaning additional healing at the end of every turn, and before it could finish off Goku with another Smart Strike, I ended up getting the move Fly, and after that, I then chose to bring in Dr. Brief, and the first move he ended up getting was Arm Thrust, which unfortunately only managed to score 3 hits, and that was still not enough to knock out Seeking. So Nessa ended up using a Full Restore, and honestly, I'm kinda glad she did that, because the next move that Dr. Brief decided to use was Pain Split, which would have been worse on my end if Nessa chose not to use a Full Restore that turn. Dr. Brief fell 2 turns later to a Mega Horn, so up next was Kyuker, and after a Nightshade attack, her next move was Cotton Guard. Something that also would have been good to get earlier too, just saying. Seeking still managed to bring Togekiss into the yellow zone, but by once again, another stroke of luck, Kyuka decided to use the move Recover, almost fully healing her back up to full. And finally, 2 more turns later, Seeking was finally defeated. Kyuka only had 1 Metronome left up to this point, but one thing's for sure, she definitely made it count, because her final attack was Acrobatics, 1-hit KOing the Barrascuda. Gliscopod then re-entered the battle, and all that took was a single Power Whip from Barris the Grimmsnarl. Pelipper was next, and after an Airy spell followed by Frenzy Plant, only 1 Pokemon left. King Kai managed to inflict a burn thanks to the move Inferno, and the next move I ended up getting was Skull Bash. And this put Dreadnought's HP in range to going down the following turn thanks to the burn, taking Nessa out of the finals. Up next was B, and just like Seeking from the last battle, her first Pokemon, Hawlucha, was pretty annoying to battle against, because this one knew the move Bounce, not only dodging half of my Metronomes, but also scoring a paralysis on Kyuga the Togekiss. But despite those annoyances, the game was kind enough to compensate, because I once again scored a 1-hit knockout thanks to the move Guillotine. Phalanx was next, and just like Beats Gardevoir, I thought this Pokemon was going to become major trouble because of moves like Bulk Up and No Retreat. Kyuga brought Phalanx down to red HP before running out of Metronomes, and while B used up her Full Restore on the Phalanx, I switched it to Dr. Brief, and unfortunately for me, Swallow, Safeguard, dead. No damage dealt whatsoever. My next choice was Boo the Dusknoir, and to my surprise, a single Hyper Beam managed to take out the Phalanx at full health, and that wasn't even a crit. Dusknoir's special attack isn't even that high, but then again, I guess Phalanx's special defense is in the same boat. I'll still take it. Surfetch then brought Dusknoir down to red HP, using the move Brutal Swing over and over again. But before it could get off the finishing attack, Dusknoir scored the move Endeavor, which brought Surfetch down to the same amount of HP Dusknoir had, so after one more attack from Gohan, Beat's next Pokemon was Graplocked, who proceeded to lock Gohan from switching out using Auto Lock. Grapploct brought Gohan down to 30 HP before falling to a Dragon Tail, leaving only G-Max Machamp. And this last move just felt like karma in a sense. But the glory from that battle did not last long, because up next was Raihan. And unlike Ness's Sea King or B's Hawlucha, but fittingly, just like his gym battle team, every Pokemon Raihan used in this battle had at least one annoying thing about them. Starting off with Torkoal, who immediately sets up the sunlight when it enters the field, making its Lava Plume attack hit harder than it otherwise would. And not just that, Torkoal also knew the move Yawn, which would put my Pokemon to sleep unless I gave them a Chesto Berry, which I did after failing this battle this amount of times you will once again see on your screen now. Raihan did end up using his full restore on the Torkoal, but Kyuuka was able to bring it down to yellow HP immediately with a single Dragon Pulse. And after landing my next attack being Ice Shard, Kyuuka once again fell asleep and eventually fell to another Lava Plume. My next choice was Goku, and one Seismic Toss later, Torkoal was out. Turtonator was next, and what makes this Pokemon annoying is the move Shell Trap, which will activate and deal damage if the opposing attacker makes physical contact. But honestly, I personally found Turtonator to be one of the least annoying Pokemon on Raihan's team, primarily because on my successful attempt at this battle, I almost one-shotted it with a single Blizzard attack. Next up was Goodra, and this one was like a less annoying Torkoal in a sense, because in order for Goodra to take advantage of the rain, instead of an ability, Goodra had to use Rain Dance in the first turn. It still had an ability which, while it wasn't taken advantage of in this battle, it did end up annoying me during earlier attempts, because if Goodra ends up getting hit by any grass type attack, it pretty much gets a buff in its attacking stat that it doesn't use for some reason. When I sent King Kai in to battle the Goodra, the first attack he managed to get off was Toxic, meaning after only a few more turns, Goodra was taken down thanks to poison damage. Flygon was the least annoying Pokemon on Raihan's team, since the only real concern it presented was sending out the Sandstorm, but after a lunge attack from King Kai, followed up by a Leaf Storm from Dr. Brief, only one Pokemon left, G-Max Duraludon, who pretty much had the same annoyances that he had during the gym battle, being the type combination and the same max moves. So, Shrink, Attack, done. And with that, we have completed the Galar League Finals. But we can't battle Leon just yet, because before the final battle could begin, Chairman Rose interrupts and announces that he's bringing about the Darkest Day. And come on, his motivation for doing this is way beyond stupid, considering it's about something that won't affect Galar for 1,000 years from now. Rose himself even acknowledges that everyone existed today won't be alive to see what everything will be like a millennium from now. But he still did it anyway, so naturally, we gotta go slap some sense into him. Boo managed to land another guillotine attack on the Escavalier, and after getting Berserker down to yellow HP using Seismic Toss, Berserker went for another Throat Chop, taking out Boo the Dusknoir. My next choice was Vegeta, and on his first turn on the field, he got the move Gear Grind, which fittingly segues into Rose's next Pokemon, Kling Klang. Well, technically it was Frosthorn, but Vegeta immediately roared it out of the battle. After getting a paralysis in the Kling Klang thanks to the move Dragon Breath, Kling Klang somehow ended up remaining fully paralyzed for 3 turns in a row. And on the turn after that, Vegeta ended up getting the move Aura Sphere, taking out the Kling Klang. And that was not the end for Vegeta, because on his very next attack, he got the move Brick Break, one-shot the Varathorn, and despite still having 5 Pokemon standing when it came down to battle G-Max Copperajah, it still ultimately came down to the wire, and thankfully, Gohan was able to prevent Copperajah from winning the battle by freezing it with an Ice Beam, and one liquidation attack later, Chairman Rose was defeated, and so was Eternatus not long after, with the help of Zacian, Zamazenta, and of course, the GOAT himself, Hop. Meaning finally, it was time to take on Champion Leon. And to say I did a bit more level grinding before taking him on is a bit of an understatement. And despite that questionable amount of grinding, Leon's first Pokemon, Aegislash, still gave me quite a bit of trouble because of its constant form changing and the move King Shield. Plus the only attack Gohan managed to score on this Pokemon before getting knocked out was an Anchor Shot. Nothing else, just that. My next choice was Vegeta, who managed to get off a Lava Plume, which did not do enough damage to fully finish off the Aegislash, but thanks to the burn Lava Plume was able to inflict, Aegislash goes down at the end of the turn. Haxorus was next, and he finished off Vegeta with a single Outrage. I thought Vegeta would be able to outspeed and at least score one more Metronome before going down, but looks like I was wrong about that. So my next choice was Kyuuka, and after she negated the Outrage from Haxorus, it hit itself in confusion, and on the very next turn, Kyuuka got the move Aeroblast, wiping out the Haxorus. Leon's next Pokemon was Rhyperior, so I decided to switch over to Boo the Dusknoir, and a single one-hammer attack was almost able to take out the Rhyperior at full health. This put it in range for Leon to use his full restore, meaning I got a free attack for 1 turn. Although by this point, Rhyperior did also bring Boo down to 24 HP, so after one more Stone Edge attack, my next choice was King Kai, and 1 Giga Drain later, Rhyperior was out. I decided to switch back into Kyogre for the Rillaboom, and while I did get the move Reflect, which would be really useful since Rillaboom is a physical attacker, if he decided to use the move Endeavor when his health gets low, then that would put me in a really bad position. So once Kyogre brought Rillaboom down to red HP with a critical hit Hydro Cannon, to my surprise, he decided to not go for Endeavor at all, despite the fact Kyogre is pretty much vulnerable at this point. But at the same time, it didn't really matter much, since the next attack, Darkest Lariat, was Kyogre's final metronome of the battle. So up next for Leon was Dragapult, and I went with King Kai, who tanked flamethrower attacks like they were nothing. I thought this would be really useful against Leon's Charizard, so I switched out to my only other Pokemon still standing, Bulmer, and despite the not favourable matchup on my end, Bulmer managed to get off a Scorching Sands attack, finishing off the Dragapult, meaning all that's left now is Charizard. And while the plan was for Bulmer to tank whatever Charizard throws out, and then finish it off with King Kai, I think I'll just let the gameplay footage speak for itself. Yeah, somehow, with one last stroke of luck, Bulma managed to get off a combination of type effectiveness and raw power, enough to one-hit KO the Charizard, and also thankfully not miss in the process. And just like that, I am now the new champion of the Galar region, and have beaten Pokémon Sword using only Metronome. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to click the subscribe button so you do not miss out on what's to come, as there will be more Pokemon themed challenges in the future, and even more centered around my favourite games like Miitopia and Wii Sports. So if those are the kind of videos that you enjoy, once again, be sure to click the subscribe button so you do not miss out on what's to come. And until next time, fellow pretzels, have a nice day. Bye!